Reincarnated with the strongest system. Chapter 671, Time Waits for No One. The day where William and Chiffon would leave the tower had come. Since the floor of Asgard had no guardian, William had given James that role. The Tower of Babylon had recognized the half-elf's decision and gave James administrative powers. Right now, James had the same authority as the other guardians of the tower, and had absolute control within the 51st floor. William had also brought James inside his 1000-beast domain and introduced his herd and legion to his grandpa. James didn't expect that his grandson had a mobile army at his disposal, which made him look at William in a new light. However, the surprise didn't end there. William had also revealed that he had formally taken the mantle of his father as the dungeon conqueror, which made James almost choke on his saliva. Although I already had my suspicions, hearing it from you still makes a difference. James sighed as he looked at his grandson in awe. Will, make sure to limit this knowledge to the people you trust. If other people were to hear this, they would definitely make trouble for you. Gramps, even if I don't tell anyone that I'm the new dungeon conqueror, they would still target me because of my accomplishments, William replied. I'm just that awesome. James laughed because that was indeed the case. William had done things high-handedly and everyone now knew his name. Even without the title of the dungeon conqueror, he was a hot potato in everyone's eyes. It was too late to act low-key when everyone was paying attention to his every move. Are there any other things that you are hiding from me? James asked. William grinned as he nodded his head. They will be arriving soon. Just wait a little bit more, Gramps. As soon as the words left William's mouth, two beauties materialized out of thin air. James smiled and opened his arms wide. To William's surprise, Princess Sidonie happily jumped into James' arms, while calling him grandfather. Unknown to William, James and Princess Sidonie had a good relationship. After finding out that the princess from the Kingdom of Frisia had hoodwinked his grandson to become her fiancé, James' impression of Princess Sidonie rose significantly. After the princess secretly went to meet him to bridge their relationship closer, the old man's impression became higher. Clearly, the beautiful princess was after their family's good genes, and James was more than happy to tie William up and let the princess marry him with his blessing. Fortunately, William was a sensible person. He gave the beautiful princess a chance to become his lover. Because of this, James and Princess Sidonie temporarily shelved their shotgun wedding plan and allowed the half-elf and the princess relationship to develop naturally. It's good to see that you are healthy, James said. How long must I wait to hold my great-grandkids? Princess Sidonie glanced briefly at William before giving her answer. Don't worry, grandfather. I am working on it. I promise that I will give you healthy grandchildren in the future. I will look forward to it. Just tell me if you need me to tie William up. There's no need for that, grandfather. Darling loves me very much. Ash watched this scene with a dumbfounded expression. She then approached William and gave him a hug. It had been a while since they had last seen each other. Even if the mermaid didn't want to admit it, her feelings for William had grown stronger while they were unable to see each other. William shared half of Ash's heart, so he could understand her feelings. Because of this, he gave her soft pecks on the lips, and promised her using telepathy that he would make it up to her as soon as he kicked James out of the 1000-beast domain. James chuckled when he saw William's attempt to pacify his lover. Just like Princess Sidonie, James had already known about Ash's relationship with William. He was very touched when he discovered that the mermaid had given half of her heart to his grandson in order to save his life. Because of this, he had a very good impression of Ash. James' only concern was the curse that forced her to be trapped in a boy's body. The only good news was that William assured him that there was a way to break the curse, and for that to happen, he needed to travel to the Creator Empire in the central continent. The old coot didn't try to persuade William out of his decision because he believed that his grandson had what it took to go to where all the powers of the world were congregated. The old man knew that regardless of the reason, William was destined to go to the central continent in order to reach a higher stage. The worldwide announcement proved that his decision was right, so he was very happy to help his grandson manage the territories that he had recently acquired, while he traveled the central continent to do the things he needed to do. Princess Sidonie lightly cleared her throat and William and Ash stopped their public display of affection. Chiffon, who was standing at the side, only smiled as she watched this scene. Although there were a few mishaps, she was still able to monopolize William for a month, so her heart was at ease. Also, she was now William's wife. There was no need to compete for his affection, because she could feel how much he loved her. The half-elf had made sure that Chiffon's unending hunger for food and love were sated completely. Interesting, James crossed his arms over his chest. How about Wendy? Can she come here? William shook his head. I will make it up to her once I return to the southern continent. James nodded his head in understanding. He was also aware that Wendy had become William's first wife, and this made him very happy. He had a fondness for the blonde beauty, who didn't bother to hide her feelings for William when she visited Launt. Gramps, since I am the floor master, as long as I am in the central continent, I have a way to instantly travel to the floor of Asgard, William explained. If you need me, just ask Fourth Master to send me a message. If I am not busy with anything, I will come immediately. James nodded his head. Don't worry. Unless it is absolutely necessary, I won't ask for your help. Ah, before I forget. I will go to the Misty Sect on the promised date. Lawrence and I talked and we will be settling things during your battle with Rebecca. William knew that although James and Lawrence were sometimes at odds with each other, they were still good friends. Although he didn't plan to hold anything back when fighting Rebecca, he would ensure that she wouldn't be humiliated. This was the least he could do for Lawrence, as well as the girl, who used him as a shield to ward off potential suitors. William summoned Solile and handed it to Ash. The latter nodded her head in understanding and left with Princess Sidonie to return to the Creator Empire. Chiffon remained in the Thousand Beast domain because William didn't want to leave her in Asgard. He could only travel by himself using his connection with Solile, so this was the only way for the pink-haired girl to travel with him. Gramps, I'll see you in the Misty Sect, William said with a smile. James patted his grandson's shoulder and gave him some words of wisdom. Although your victory is mostly assured, don't underestimate the old hags of Misty Sect. James warned. I'm sure that they'll cook up something before your battle with Rebecca. Stay alert and keep your eyes peeled. William agreed with James. Understood, grandfather. With a determined gaze, William disappeared from the floor of Asgard. Now that he had accomplished Aemon's mission, it was now time to go to the temple for the next set of tasks that Aemon had prepared for him. High above the Tower of Babylon, an old man with a long beard looked in the direction of the Creator Empire with a calm expression. He had long known that William's priorities didn't involve clearing the rest of the floors of the tower, but that was fine with him. Each person was fated to fight on different battlefields, but all rivers lead to the sea. Do your best, little one, the old man muttered. Time waits for no one. Chapter 672, It is at the moment of death when life shines its brightest. You've done well, Aemon said with a benevolent smile on his face. To be perfectly honest, I didn't expect you to finish that quest. In fact, I was hoping that you'd be stuck there for eternity. William nodded his head in agreement. He had been through many difficulties, of them were easy, but the 51st floor was truly one of the hardest battles he had faced in his life. I would like to thank you for sending me to the Tower of Babylon, Your Excellency, William replied. Because of you, I was able to marry a beautiful wife, as well as remember a lot of things. Aemon rested the side of his face over his closed fist and eyed William with great interest. Although he was annoyed with William, that didn't mean that he wasn't able to appreciate the achievement that he had made. What Aemon didn't know was that although William had gained a lot of things by clearing the 51st floor of the tower, the red-headed teenager had also lost many important things to him. Now, it's time for you to do your second quest, Aemon stated. You have an upcoming battle with your childhood fiancé, right? The corner of William's lips twitched because he could feel the sarcasm that was oozing out of Aemon's voice. However, he decided that he should just play along for the time being and humor the god in front of him. That way, Aemon might make his quest a little bit easier. Yes, Your Excellency, William replied. I will be fighting with her in less than 2 months' time. Aemon nodded his head. Since that is the case, your next quest will be defeating her in your match. However, there is a condition. The Grand Marquis of Hell raised a finger as he regarded William coolly. He understood that Rebecca didn't stand a chance at winning against William in her current state, so he decided to make things a little bit more interesting. William placed his hands behind his back as he waited for Aemon to mention his condition. You are not allowed to jump to the saint rank when fighting against her, Aemon said with a smile. The moment your strength exceeds that threshold, your quest will immediately fail. That means that I will not lift the curses on Ian and Isaac. William frowned. He originally wanted to finish the battle right away, but with this restriction, he would not be able to activate his trump cards. The half-elf wasn't worried about fighting against Rebecca, even without using heroic avatar in his Einherjar job class. However, he was worried that the Misty Sect would pull a trick on him during the battle, which would make things extremely difficult for him to win. If he were able to use his trump cards, William was confident that he would be able to face whatever they threw at him. Now that he had this restriction, he needed to make plans in order to guarantee his victory. This was an important battle for him. He couldn't afford to lose. I understand, Your Excellency, William replied. It will be as you say. Good. Now, run along now. There are still a few weeks to go before your fated battle. Be sure to do your best to win. I will do my best. Aemon watched as William disappeared from the temple. The half-elf had used Solile to instantly teleport to the Silverwind Academy after his meeting with the patron god of the Creator Empire. The Marquis of Hell lingered for a bit longer before he disappeared from the temple. A few minutes later, he reappeared in Astrid's castle and found his twin drinking tea in the garden. I was a bit surprised, brother, Astrid said as she placed her cup on the table. I thought you were going to make things very hard for him, but you surprisingly held back on his next mission. Tell me, what made you change your mind? Aemon took the seat opposite his sister and casually picked up the teacup that was meant for him to drink. After taking a few sips of Astrid's special tea, he placed it back on the table before answering his twin. I didn't make things hard for him, this much is true, Aemon nodded. This time, I made it fair. Lily came to visit me earlier, and threatened to whack me with a candy cane if I made the next test extremely difficult. Lilith was Aemon's friend, so he didn't want to burn bridges with her. Also, William had just come back from a difficult quest, so he decided to appease the lowly goddess before ramping up the difficulty of the next quest. Astrid frowned, but she didn't say anything else. The fact that William had managed to clear the 51st floor also made her raise her impression of the boy. In her mind, she reluctantly admitted that William had what it took to become her disciple's lover. The two gods drank their teas in silence. A minute later, both of them looked at the place where the cycle of reincarnation was located. Both gods frowned because they had heard it clearly. The shattering of a world, and the destruction of one of the red portals that hung in the sky of the cycle of reincarnation. That's the 9th one this year, Aemon said as he placed his teacup back on the table. Do those guys never take a vacation? Astrid sighed and continued to drink her tea. This is the cycle of death and rebirth, Astrid said softly. Even gods are not exempt from this rule. Aemon reluctantly nodded his head. This was indeed a part of the cycle. But for some reason, he felt that there was more to this than met the eye. The gods of destruction had been becoming very active as of late. Although they had faced staunch opposition in every world that they visited, they were still able to perform their duties without fail. In this regard, Aemon only had admiration for them. But, deep inside, he also feared them. He glanced at his sister, who was drinking her tea in a calm manner. If not for the fact that she was his twin, he wouldn't be able to notice the subtle changes in her mannerism and expression. Aemon was about to say something, but held back at the last second. He knew that it was futile, so he decided to just keep his feelings to himself. After finishing his drink, he bid his sister goodbye and returned to his palace in hell, leaving Astrid alone in her thoughts. "You can't fight the inevitable," Astrid said softly as she poured herself more tea, "but, the final struggle is still worth watching. It is at the moment of death when life shines its brightest." Chapter 673, I have a proposal to make. As soon as William arrived in his room after his visit from Aemon's temple, he found himself seized by 3 beautiful girls and kidnapped to the Thousand Beast domain. Princess Sidonie had been holding back because she knew that William had urgent things to attend to, but she had reached her limit. Because of this, she decided to take action and invited Ash and Chiffon to cooperate with him. Although she was jealous that the pink-haired girl had married William before her, there was nothing she could do about it. The rice had already been cooked, so the only thing she could do was to ensure that the next person that William would marry was her. For that to happen, she had urged her grandfather, Emperor Leonidas, to publicly announce their wedding and ensure that the half-elf wouldn't be able to run away, even if he grew wings. "Calm down, girls," William said after he was tossed to the bed like a tied-up dumpling. "I'm not going anywhere. Let's do this properly, okay?" Princess Sidonie didn't listen to him and pounced on him after transforming into a succubus. It had been more than a month since her divinity was suppressed, and she was really at her limit. Ash and Chiffon didn't want to be left out, so they joined forces with Sidonie and attacked William, leaving him, and little Will, unable to form any kind of resistance. A few hours later, the soft sleeping breaths of 3 beautiful girls permeated inside the room. Princess Sidonie laid on William's left side and held his arm as she slept. Ash laid on his right, and was holding his arm as well. As for Chiffon, she laid on top of William with her head resting on his chest. The little glutton's drool pooled on William's chest as she slept with a satisfied expression on her face. The half-elf was also sound asleep because his girls had squeezed him dry until little Will fainted due to exhaustion. He didn't resist his lover's advances because he, too, wanted to spend time together with them. There were only a few weeks left before he needed to travel to the Savadine Mountains, where the headquarters of the Misty Sect was located. Since Aemon had given him a condition, he needed to raise the levels of his job classes in the time he had left in order to prepare for any situation. He was not aware of how strong Rebecca was, but he was sure that his opponent still hadn't reached the saint rank. As long as he wasn't fighting a saint, William had the confidence to beat anyone in a one-on-one battle with the exception of his 6th master, Chloe. "Relax, with our sect's treasured artifact, Rebecca will be able to boost her strength up to the saint rank in one go," the sect master assured the elders of the sect. "Not only that, Her Excellency, Meredith, has agreed to our request. With her help, Rebecca's chances of winning have drastically increased." All of the elders of the Misty Sect nodded their heads. Some of them sighed in relief in their hearts because William's achievements gave them an invisible pressure that made them feel uncomfortable. How could they possibly not feel pressured? Their core disciple was going to fight against the strongest prodigy of the young generation. All the powerful and influential factions in the continent were now preparing to visit their sect for their founding day. Those that came from far away had started their journey a few weeks ago. This was to ensure that they wouldn't be late to the entertainment that they were expecting to see. More than anything else, the Misty Sect didn't want to be the laughingstock of everyone in the central continent. This was something that they had to avoid no matter what. "What is Rebecca's current rank?" "Thea, the sect master of the Misty Sect, asked Eleanor. Rebecca's master had been paying close attention to Rebecca's progress and she was quite satisfied with her current rank. "Right now, Rebecca has just broken through the 7th circle," Eleanor replied. "She's currently stabilizing her rank in preparation for her duel with William." A/N, 7th Circle Magician is equivalent to the Adamantium/Centennial rank. Take note that a mage is stronger than an ordinary warrior. If magicians were to fight with people with the same rank, their chances of winning were extremely high. Thea nodded her head. Although it didn't show on her face, she was also satisfied with Rebecca's development. There were only a handful of individuals that could reach that rank in her age group, which proved that her magic prowess was truly outstanding. After she has stabilized her rank, hand her the Sect's artifact, Thea ordered. Teach her how to use it properly, so she will be competent when she uses it in her duel. Eleanor nodded her head. Leave this task to me, Sect Master. I will not fail you. As you should, Thea replied crisply. Failure is not an option. Also, make sure to tell the wardens to bring 30 high-grade snow crystals, and spread them around the arena. That will strengthen the power of ice magic and ensure that Rebecca will have the upper hand. It will be done as you command, the head warden pledged. Sect Master, I have a proposal to make. Thea nodded. Speak. The head warden smiled as she gave her suggestion. Since the battle is inevitable, how about we raise the stakes and coerce William to have a bet with us? Thea frowned, but she still waited for the head warden to finish her explanation. Seeing that everyone's attention was on her, the head warden was feeling ecstatic. She had only thought of this idea a few minutes ago, but the more she thought about it, the more appealing it was. Because of this, she decided to make the proposal to Thea and see whether she would also consider this idea for the Sect's benefit. Let's ask him to make a bet with us, the head warden said. If he wins, then he can ask our Sect to do 3 things for him. Regardless of what it is, as long as it doesn't break our morals, we will agree to it. In return, if he loses, then he would give us ownership of one of the floors of Babylon that are currently under his command. Since we are doing our best to ensure Rebecca's victory, why not profit from it as well? What do you think, Sect Master? The elders of the Misty Sect were surprised by the head warden's boldness. Some of them gasped in shock, while others remained silent, contemplating the pros and cons of her proposal. Thea was also moved by the head warden's words. Having a floor in the Tower of Babylon was akin to having an ownership of an entire kingdom. If their Misty Sect could gain ownership of one, then their prestige and status would rise among their peers. Let me think about this for a few days, Thea replied. For now, let us end our meeting and resume our duties. I ask the elders to supervise the preparations so that we won't be embarrassed in front of our guests. Head warden, please, make sure that our security is enough to handle the influx of people and prevent anyone from committing any crimes during their stay. I authorize you to deal with criminals as you please. The elders and the head wardens nodded their heads before leaving the room. Thea remained behind as she pondered the possibility of owning one of the floors of Babylon. She didn't know how strong William was, but she was confident that the preparations they had in mind would be enough to deal with him. Somewhere in the Aberdeen Mountains, a majestic creature briefly opened its eyes. It was the guardian of the Misty Sect, and a being that had been in the central continent for thousands of years. After scanning its domain, it once again closed its eyes to sleep. A powerful blizzard appeared out of nowhere and covered the mountains in a veil of white. For the members of the Misty Sect, the blizzard was a delightful sight. To others, this scene was enough to make them tremble in fright. For the one that slept on top of the Aberdeen Mountains was a being of old. No matter how fierce the blizzard blew, it was not afraid of the cold. Chapter 674 The Amazons are after your genes. When Gilbert discovered that William had suddenly appeared in the academy, he immediately notified Emperor Leonidas and Evexius of his arrival. The two didn't waste any time and immediately went to the Silverwind Academy, but when they arrived, no traces of William, Ash, Chiffon, or Princess Sidonie could be seen. Where is he? Emperor Leonidas asked Gilbert, who was waiting for their arrival. Gilbert sighed and shook his head. I don't know where he went. He met up with Princess Sidonie, and his retainer, Ian. I thought that they were just going to do some catching up, so I decided to give them some space. After a few hours, I went to look for him, but I couldn't find the three of them anywhere. Emperor Leonidas frowned, but he felt like William would appear sooner or later, so he told Gilbert to keep his eye open, and wait for the boy to return to the academy. Kenneth and Lilith also heard about the news and immediately went to the academy to look for him as well. However, they came out empty-handed. They were not aware that the half-elf was courageously fighting a battle with his girls in the Thousand Beast domain, and was currently being peppered with attacks that would make all the young men in the Creator Empire green with envy. Although Emperor Leonidas and Evexius left the academy, Kenneth and Lilith decided to stay. Since they were now official guests of the Creator Empire, Gilbert treated them well and assigned accommodations to the two of them while waiting for William. The next day, William finally appeared in the academy. Because of the worldwide announcements, all the students were aware of the feats that he had performed. The professors of the academy had a meeting a day after the announcement, and decided to tell their students about the Tower of Babylon. Originally, they thought that William's achievements were no big deal. However, after learning the history of the tower and the 51st floor, the red-headed teenager suddenly became their idol. Gilbert was also very proud. Regardless of what anyone said, William was a student of his academy on paper. What did this mean? This meant that the strongest young prodigy in the world was enrolled in his academy. He. All of the other academies can fight for second place. Because of this, he had applied for a raise in his salary, which made Emperor Leonidas roll his eyes. Still, the additional salary was approved, which made the half-elf extra pleasing in Gilbert's eyes. "You did well, William," Gilbert praised the boy who was seated in front of him. "You made the academy proud." William smiled and nodded his head. "Thank you, headmaster. The advice you gave me helped me a lot." "I know," Gilbert replied with a smug expression on his face. "Without my help, you wouldn't have been able to achieve what you did." William stared at the shameless old man with a dumbfounded expression on his face. He was merely acting humble, but the headmaster had decided to toot his own horn, and praise himself for doing a good job. "I was just being polite, okay? Why are you acting so smug? Are you the one that fought Belial?" William was very tempted to spit on the old man to bring him down a peg, but decided that it wasn't worth it. Gilbert was still the headmaster of the academy, so he decided to let the old man be shameless for the time being. "Where did you go yesterday?" Gilbert inquired. "His Majesty and His Excellency came here personally to see you, but you were nowhere to be found. I checked the monitoring devices of the academy, but I didn't see you leave the academy." "How did you do it?" William cleared his throat because he remembered the embarrassing scene of him being pinned down by his three lovers. He was supposed to meet with Gilbert after visiting Amon's temple and thank him for his help, but he was kidnapped by Princess Sidonie. "I had some pressing matters to attend to, so I decided to sneak out of the academy," William replied. "Did His Majesty say anything before he left?" "Yes. He said that the two of you needed to talk, so don't leave the academy for the time being." "Understood." Gilbert was very curious, so he pestered William to tell him what the trial of the 51st floor was like. The half-elf felt that it wouldn't hurt to tell Gilbert a few things about the Devil's Floor, so he narrated a tale of half-truth and lies to the headmaster of the academy. William didn't mention anything about him and Chiffon getting married. The little glutton said that they should keep it a secret for now. The only ones who knew were his lovers, his grandpa, Ezio, Vlad, and Celeste. Chiffon didn't want the news to make its way to the demonic continent because she remembered that her father hated the surname Ainsworth. She only recalled this information after staying on the floor of Asgard for a few weeks. Of course, she also told William about this matter, but the latter only nodded his head. The half-elf didn't think that it was a big deal because he thought that his grandfather and Chiffon's dad had crossed each other's path in the past. After having a near-death encounter with Cernunnos, the half-elf had a firm belief that his grandpa had made a lot of enemies when he was young and still actively traveling the world of Hestia. Also, William wasn't afraid of Chiffon's father. He already knew the bastard's name, and face, due to Chiffon's heart devil. The half-elf had added Lucille to the list of people that he would give a beating to in the future. "You got lucky," Gilbert said as he eyed William with a serious expression. "If Chiffon wasn't there, your chance of winning would have been very slim." William nodded his head in agreement. After experiencing firsthand the power of Chiffon's devour divinity, the red-headed teenager realized that she was the bane of all domain-type territories. As long as Chiffon opened her mouth, an entire floor would be swallowed whole. There was simply no way to block and run away from this attack. The only choice one had was to leave the floor as soon as possible, before they got sucked inside her mouth, never to appear again. Gilbert then remembered something and chuckled. "Boy, be careful of the Amazon race. Their princess is here at the academy and is waiting for your appearance." "Amazon race?" William frowned. "Why should I be careful around them?" He didn't remember having any conflict with the Amazon race. He hadn't even met any of them during his travels, so Gilbert's warning made him tilt his head in confusion. "You really don't know?" Gilbert asked before slapping his forehead. "I forgot you came from the southern continent." "Very well, let me tell you something about the Amazons. This is a warrior race dominated by women. They are always in the lookout for strong individuals to invite to their empire to mate with them. Right now, all the Amazons are after your genes. For them, you are the ideal candidate to sire the next generation of Amazon warriors. One of their princesses is here at the academy. Her name is Lilith, and she is also the champion of the tournament that ended a month ago." William rubbed his chin as he pondered. There was no doubt that this was a tricky subject. Although he didn't want to have any conflicts with the Amazons, Gilbert's tone made him feel that the warrior race was hell-bent on catching him, no matter what. Chapter 675, Another troublesome character has appeared. After leaving Gilbert's office, William walked towards the boys' dormitory. All the students that saw him looked at him with admiration, respect, envy, and jealousy. William couldn't stop the corner of his lips from rising due to the attention he was receiving. However, since he was a refined, elegant, and charismatic person, he decided to act humble and pretend that he was not aware of their stares. As he neared the boys' dormitory, he saw a familiar person blocking his path. Although it had been years since they last saw each other, William could easily identify the delicate-looking boy who had once been his roommate when he was still in the Hellan Royal Academy. William grinned as he walked towards Kenneth and gave him a hug. Originally, Kenneth wanted to dodge, but realized that there was no reason for him to do that. In the end, he didn't resist William's friendly gesture, and allowed himself to be hugged. William's hug lasted only for a few seconds before he pulled back, and looked at Kenneth's pointy ears. "So, you are an elf," William said softly. Kenneth nodded and gave William an apologetic gaze. "Sorry for hiding my identity. I had my reasons for not telling you. Let's go to my room to talk. There are too many people paying attention to us." "Okay." William led the way and Kenneth followed behind him. As they walked, Kenneth was paying close attention to William's movements. The elf could feel a strength emanating from the half-elf's body, and his back seemed wider compared to the last time he saw him. "He looks more dependable now," Kenneth thought with a smile. "I'm sure Master will be happy to hear what I have to say when I give her my report." After returning to the Silver Moon continent, Kenneth's family had ordered him to pay close attention to William. Among the candidates for the Prince of Darkness, William's name was currently at the top. The Rayleigh family ordered Kenneth to meet up with William and monitor him at all times. Since William and the elves had a complicated relationship, only Kenneth was suitable for the job. Kenneth naturally didn't reject this offer because William's mother, Lady Arwen, had also tasked him with passing on a letter to William. After the elves' defeat at the southern continent, no one dared to provoke the half-elf any longer. Even the king of the elves had personally visited Arwen and had a private meeting with her. No one knew what they discussed, but after their talk had ended, the Saintess of the World Tree summoned Kenneth and asked him to personally deliver a message to William. Also, Arwen insisted that Kenneth should stay by William's side for a year or two. Since this was a request from his master, the silver-haired elf had no objection and promised to do as he was told. After entering the room, Kenneth noticed Ian and a pink-haired girl seated on the couch, holding a golden piglet in her hands. The moment William entered the room, Chiffon stood up and walked towards him. William reached out and patted her head before walking towards the couch. Once he was seated, Chiffon sat on his lap and rested her head on his shoulder. This intimate act made Kenneth frown, but he didn't say anything. He had seen the tenderness in William's eyes when he looked at Chiffon, and Kenneth assumed that the girl was someone important to his friend. "Sit," William said as he made a gesture for Kenneth to sit on the couch across from him. Kenneth sat obediently and stared at Chiffon with curiosity. Seeing that his ex-roommate was paying close attention to the young lady in his arms, William decided to make an introduction. "Chiffon, this is Kenneth. He was one of the officers in my night order back in the Hellan Kingdom," William said. "Kenneth, this is my wife, Chiffon." Ian, who was seated beside William, was tempted to say that she was his wife too, but decided to keep her silence. Unlike William, she didn't trust Kenneth completely, so she had no intention of saying anything unnecessary to the race that tried to invade their kingdom. Before Kenneth could even say something, a loud knock was heard on the door, which made everyone in the room stop what they were doing. As William's retainer, Ian stood up and went to the door to see who it was. A beautiful lady with sun-kissed skin gave Ian a refreshing smile, which made the latter close the door and lock it completely. A few seconds later, a series of loud knocks ensued and Lilith's voice could be heard from outside the door. "Open up. I just want to have a talk with him." "Why are you treating me this way?" Lilith asked. Ian didn't answer and pretended not to hear anything. She then returned to sit beside William as if nothing had happened. "Who is it?" William asked. He was very curious about the identity of the person that was banging the door repeatedly. "Just a greedy Amazon," Ian replied. "She's not important." William only managed to say an "oh" before shifting his gaze back to Kenneth. Although the red-headed teenager was curious, Gilbert had already warned him about the Amazons, so he decided to put Lilith aside for the time being. Kenneth had an approving look on his face with how Ian treated Lilith. However, this approving look didn't last long before his gaze shifted once again to the pink-haired girl in William's embrace. "She's your wife?" Kenneth decided to confirm whether William was just joking with him or not. William nodded. "Yes, we got married in the Tower of Babylon." The reason why William was telling this to Kenneth was because Ash and Princess Sidney had already told him that Kenneth was his mother's messenger. Since that was the case, he decided to not hide the fact that Chiffon was his wife. This way, Kenneth could pass this information on to his mother. William didn't know how his mother would react to the news, but he was confident that once she met Chiffon, Arwen would definitely get along with her. Kenneth was about to ask another question when the door of the room suddenly fell flat on the floor with a resounding thud. "Did you honestly think that a simple door would be able to stop me?" Lilith entered the room with a confident smile plastered on her face. Her gaze landed on William and the smile on her face widened. "You must be William," Lilith said while appraising the half-elf from head to foot. "Okay, you pass. Come with me back to the Ares Empire. I will personally give birth to your babies." The corner of William's lips twitched when he heard the Amazon princess' arrogant words. This was not the first time that someone had asked for his babies. Princess Sidney had done the same, but Lilith's words held no room for rejection. Another troublesome character has appeared. William sighed in his heart. With the appearance of Kenneth and Lilith, William could already feel that he would once again find himself in a troublesome situation. He already had many things on his plate, including his battle with Rebecca. He just didn't have the energy to deal with the smug-looking Amazon princess who thought that she could drag him back to their empire just because she felt like it. Chapter 676, I don't love you, but I need you. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Lilith, Lilith said. I am the fourth princess of the Amazon race. Nice to meet you. Lilith reached out her hand for a handshake, which William accepted. William replied as he shook Lilith's hand twice before letting go. Lilith arched her eyebrows as she looked at the pink-haired girl beside William. Since she was one of the 7 sins, it was quite easy for her to know that Chiffon was one of her sisters. This discovery caught her interest as she re-evaluated William. With a single glance, she could tell that the half-elf and the girl who was looking at her with curiosity had a close relationship. Sister, this is the first time we've met, Lilith stated. May I know your name? Chiffon nodded as she introduced herself. Chiffon Val Gremory. Lilith smiled. She already knew that Princess Sidonie was William's fiancée, and she held the sin of lust. What piqued the Amazon's interest was that aside from the lusty princess, the sin of sloth was also an acquaintance of William. According to Princess Sidonie, Kenneth was a messenger sent by William's mother, Arwen, to pass a message to him. Having 2 sins around a single person could still be considered a coincidence, but if you add the sin of gluttony to the equation, it became obvious that William and the 7 deadly sins had some sort of invisible link between them. After her initial statement, Lilith decided to probe further. Right now, William was her ideal candidate. The half-elf had good looks, he had good lineage, and the achievements he had were most satisfactory. Also, for some reason, when she looked at William, she had a strong feeling that she was looking at a very greedy and shameless person. If he also had a domineering personality, then he was the Prince Charming she was waiting for. Lilith held back the strong urge to kidnap William and drag him back to the Amazonian Empire. For now, she decided to know more about him by asking a few questions. Looking at Chiffon, she could tell that the girl looked obedient, unlike Princess Sidonie, who was hell-bent to kick her out of the Creator Empire. May I ask what your relationship with William is? Lilith asked Chiffon with a smile. Chiffon didn't even blink when she gave her answer. I am his wife. Congratulations, sister. You found yourself a good man. Thank you. Can I share him with you? Lilith asked. Don't worry. I will not challenge your position as main wife. I just want his genes. Chiffon's body stiffened. She then buried her face in William's chest because Lilith's gaze made her feel uncomfortable. The Amazon's eyes were similar to a gold digger who had found her sugar daddy. The moment she locked on someone, she wouldn't ever let go. William's overprotectiveness kicked in as he hugged his wife. He then glanced at Lilith, and the latter gave him a flirtatious smile and a wink. Princess Lilith, sorry but I can't accompany you to the Amazon Empire, William replied. I have many things that I need to do, and I just don't have any time to agree to your request. Lilith chuckled. She was already expecting William's rejection, but she wasn't bothered by it. There had been many people who had proposed to her, and even tried to bring her to their own empires by force, so she could understand where the half-elf was coming from. Don't worry, it doesn't have to be now. Lilith smiled sweetly. I know you still have to go to the Misty Sect. I am free right now, so I will accompany you, and watch your battle with your childhood sweetheart. She's not my childhood sweetheart. Is that so? That's better. The less the love rivals around, the more chances I have to woo your heart. The corner of William's lips twitched. The half-elf always thought that it would always be the guys who chased after beautiful girls. At least, that is what he had read in the stories back on Earth. However, here in Hestia, it was the opposite. Princess Sidonie and Lilith were chasing after him. Do you like me? William asked. Lilith covered her lips and giggled. Do you want an honest answer? Of course. Okay. Lilith sat properly and placed her hands over her lap. She then looked at William with a serious expression, her eyes looking straight at him. This is the first time we've met, so if you are going to ask me if I like you, then the answer is no, Lilith stated. However, that doesn't change the fact that right now, you are the most ideal candidate to become my partner. You have the looks, the talent, the background, and the prestige. Let's not talk about whether you are wealthy or not. Just the fact that you are the owner of several floors of the tower makes you richer than any prince in the central continent. Lilith leaned back on the couch and crossed one leg over the other. The Amazons are a warrior race. Naturally, we have feelings too, Lilith stated. However, the majority of us set aside these feelings in order to pave the path for the next generation. Strength and power are the most important things to us, love and other reasons can fight for second place. To cut it short, no, I don't love you, but I need you. You are the most ideal partner for me. I don't care if you are married, or how many wives you have. What I need from you is your seed, so I can give birth to the strongest Amazon that will carry my race to a better and brighter future. William could feel Lilith's sincerity and his impression of her grew by a notch. Even Ian, Chiffon, and Kenneth couldn't keep themselves from admiring her boldness. While the four people were looking at her in a new light, the seriousness in Lilith's face disappeared and was replaced by a carefree expression. Although I said all that, that doesn't mean that I am not immune to love. Lilith eyed William with sparkling eyes. I am the sin of greed. Just looking at you is enough for me to see gold coins jumping up and down. If you and I get married, wouldn't that mean that I'll be swimming in riches? I don't even have to work. I can even retire at the age of 20. William's good impression of Lilith immediately disappeared. He was the type to leech and scam others, but the sin of greed was the professional in this regard. The atmosphere inside the room became awkward, as Lilith stared at William as if he was a sack of gold coins waving at her, practically begging her to take him away. Before anyone could even say anything to break the stalemate, another person entered the room. She glared at Lilith as if she was a thieving cat who planned to steal her lollipop. You've already talked to William, now scram. Princess Sidonie declared as she stood between William and Lilith. Clearly, she had no intention of sharing William with another sinner, especially if the sin that they carried was greed. Chapter 677, Darling, she bullied us. Lilith stared at Princess Sidonie with a smirk. Ever since she had decided to stay at the Creator Empire, the Princess of Frisia had been aloof and avoided her like a plague. However, now that William had returned, Princess Sidonie was like a mother hen protecting her egg from getting snatched by a greedy snake. The two stared at each other. One was shooting daggers, the other, calm as a lake. After some time, a mischievous smile appeared on Lilith's face as she raised her hand and made a snatching move in the air. This is quite beautiful, Lilith said as she admired the item on her hand. A collar made of mithril? Such an intricate design. I wonder how much I could sell it for. Princess Sidonie's hand immediately moved to her neck. After sensing that the collar was no longer there, she immediately tried to snatch the collar on Lilith's hand, but the latter was quite agile and moved out of the way. Give that back to me! Princess Sidonie shouted. For her, the collar was her connection to William. It was her wedding ring, and an artifact that signified that she belonged to William. For her, it was the most important treasure in her possession, and having it snatched away from her made her panic. I don't wanna. Lilith stuck her tongue out before sprinting out of the room. Since the door was already destroyed, there was no barring her way from running away. Give that back to me! Princess Sidonie roared as she ran after Lilith. The Amazon turned her head and laughed out loud as she ran like the wind. As a warrior, her physical prowess surpassed the princess, who specialized in schemes and deceit. It didn't take long for her to leave her pursuer in the dust and leave the boys' dormitory. Suddenly, Lilith's sixth sense warned her that something deadly was coming at her from behind. The Amazon immediately jumped to the side, just in time to see a purple fireball decimate the place she had been running a moment ago. Lilith frowned when she saw a beautiful lady whose hair fluttered in the breeze. Two bat-like wings flapped behind her back, and two small horns protruded on her head. A serpentine tail could be seen dangling behind her back, and her golden eyes were looking at the Amazon princess with a murderous intent. I guess I really angered her this time, Lilith thought as she looked at the princess that had unleashed her power without caring about the consequences. Still, this is a good opportunity to see how strong she is. Lilith's expression became serious as several crystal swords appeared around her. She had also activated her divinity and was planning to battle Sidonie when a hand pressed on her shoulder from behind. "That's enough," a firm, yet unyielding voice said. The owner of the voice clearly implied that there was no room for negotiation. It even had a subtle killing intent that made Lilith's heart skip a beat. Lilith frowned and turned her head. It had been a long time since someone had ordered her around. She wanted to see just who the idiot was who dared to touch her so casually. Those who had tried to do the same to her in the past had already turned into crystal statues. A pair of clear, light green eyes met hers. They were calm on the surface, but Lilith saw a glimpse of a storm hidden in their depths. A storm that would devastate her if she did something funny. "The collar," William stated. "Give it to me. That belongs to my lover." Lilith's first reaction was to brush his hand away, but her battle sense was screaming at her to not do anything rash. William was not releasing an aura or activating any kind of power, but there was an invisible suppression that weighed on her like a mountain. The Amazon didn't like this feeling. She didn't like being suppressed by others, because she had a rebellious heart. Even her mother, Empress Andrastet, had trouble controlling her. However, right now, her intuition was telling her that if she didn't give this handsome half-elf the collar in her hands, she would regret it for life. "Here," Lilith replied as she obediently passed the collar to William. William took the collar from her hand and smiled. "Thank you." William removed the hand that was resting on Lilith's shoulder. Immediately, the pressure that had been holding her in place disappeared without a trace. It was as if she was just imagining things. William walked towards the succubus who was still glaring at Lilith from the sky. "Come down, Morgana," William said. "It's over. There's no need to escalate the situation." The beautiful succubus glared at Lilith one last time before descending towards the ground. "Darling, she bullied us," Morgana complained. "It's okay," William coaxed the disgruntled succubus as he gently placed the collar back on her neck. "I love you." William then kissed Morgana's lips, catching her by surprise. The succubus froze for a brief moment before returning William's kiss. Several students, who had been alarmed due to the explosion, watched the half-elf and the beautiful princess kiss without a care in the world. The girls felt their cheeks redden because for them, William was the most popular teenager in the continent right now. The boys, on the other hand, wanted to curse out loud and swap places with William. "Brew, if you want to kiss then go find a room and kiss. Can't you give us single people any mercy? We want that kind of action, too." Sensing that more people were gathering around the surroundings, William was the first to back off. He then lightly pinched Morgana's cheek before whispering something in her ear. The latter had already undone her transformation, so no one was able to see her succubus form. She then gave Lilith the grin of a victor before dragging William away with a big smile on her face. Lilith watched this scene with a calm expression on her face, but deep inside her heart, a storm was raging. She placed a hand over her chest in order to help calm her wildly beating heart. Several complicated emotions stirred in her being. There was surprise, anger, and jealousy, but what confused her was the feeling of being dominated. Lilith had long joked with her mother that she wanted to have a dominating man that could conquer her heart, body, and soul. However, these were just mere words because she didn't believe that such a man would appear in her life. For some reason, Lilith felt scared. She was afraid because, in that brief moment when William's hand was on her shoulder, she felt powerless. It was as if her power had abandoned her, and it made her feel weak, alone, and exposed to the world. It was a very unnerving feeling and it made her feel insecure. After calming her emotions, she left the scene with hurried steps and headed towards the residence where she had been staying in the academy. William's voice and gaze still lingered in her mind. A part of her wanted to scream and repel the fear and weakness in her heart. The other half wanted to explore these new feelings that were making her feel unstable. She believed that once she understood what these feelings meant, she would be able to break free from her current realm, and soar to greater heights. William von Ainsworth, Lilith muttered, "You jerk." Chapter 678, The Amazon Princess Pride and Dignity. Lilith tossed and turned from the bed. She was unable to sleep. The incident that happened a few hours ago was still fresh from her mind. The collar. "Give it to me. That belongs to my lover." Every time she closed her eyes to sleep, she would hear William's voice. She would see William's face. She would see that smile, that made her heart skip a beat. Lilith knew that she wasn't in love with William. She was as certain of that as the fact that the sun would rise up from the east when she woke up in the morning. There is something wrong with him, Lilith thought as she hugged her pillow. I am a strong warrior. However, just a few words from him were enough to make me feel fearful. This is unheard of. Lilith thought long and hard about why she had that reaction to William during that time. She could still remember his eyes. Those clear eyes that stared at her was something she wouldn't forget. There was power within their depths, and although they were clear and bright, the Amazon could have sworn that she had caught a glimpse of darkness inside them. After tossing and turning for another hour, she sat upright on the bed, closed her eyes, and meditated. Several minutes later, she found herself in a place surrounded with glittering treasures. It was a treasure house that held immeasurable wealth that seemed to have no end. In the center of it all was a golden throne. There sat an ethereal beauty with long blonde hair, and golden eyes that looked back at Lilith in a teasing manner. "Come, my daughter," the goddess raised her hand in a welcoming gesture. "What troubles you, my dear?" Lilith didn't give the lady any reply. Instead, she ran towards her and buried her head in the goddess' bountiful chest. The blonde beauty chuckled as she patted Lilith's head. She didn't say anything else and simply allowed her daughter to regain her calm. "Godmother, what do I do?" Lilith asked as she looked up at the goddess with uncertainty. "I think I made a blunder. It's about that boy, William, right?" "Yes." Mammon, the goddess of wealth, smiled as she lovingly pinched Lilith's cheeks. "You don't have to worry about him," Mammon said with a smile. "He's a shameless bastard whose greed knows no bounds. If he was born a girl, there is a high chance that he might have been born with the sin of greed, and not you." Lilith pouted. She knew that Mammon was just teasing her, but she still felt an ache in her heart because there was really a high possibility that William might have taken her place if the half-elf had been born a girl. Mammon giggled as she looked at the pouting Amazon in front of her. "What's wrong?" "He's just a half-elf," Mammon commented. "Don't tell me that my daughter can't even beat him black and blue before dragging him to your bed. You're losing your touch, Lilith." Lilith frowned. "For some reason, I have a feeling that I can't use force when dealing with him." "Haven't you always used force to get your way? Why change your tactics now?" "Because he is different. He's not like the other boys I've met before." After regaining her calm, Lilith finally understood why she held complicated feelings towards William. It was because the half-elf's achievements were so high. Lilith was the tournament champion. She should have held the title of the strongest prodigy in the world, but just one divine announcement was enough to make all of her efforts become lackluster. Deep inside, Lilith was unresigned to this kind of treatment. She wanted to be the one who was in control, especially in a relationship. In the past, Lilith had vowed that she would only mate with a person that was stronger than her. Someone who could beat her in a direct confrontation in order to gain her recognition. However, after experiencing the tournament, her arrogance grew. Although she had met several strong opponents, of them were her match. This feeling of incompleteness made her think that there wasn't a single person who could match her prowess. That was, until she had met William. Even so, she didn't love him. Sure, she had a good impression of him, and could even say that she was attracted to him to a certain extent, but that was all. He was the most ideal partner among the young generation. It was this belief that made Lilith wait for him in the Creator Empire. However, after discovering that several members of the 7 deadly sins had a connection with William, she felt that something was extremely unusual. In the history of the continent, there had never been someone that was able to gather more than 2 members of the 7 sins to their side. Among the 7 deadly sins, greed was the most sensitive of all. Lilith had felt the mark of lust, gluttony, sloth, and even one more sin on William's body, which caught her completely by surprise. If she added herself in the equation, there would be 5 sins that were already in William's faction. "He's a dangerous person," Lilith said while looking up at her patron god. "He's collecting the sins of the world." "You're right. He's a greedy little bastard." Mammon nodded her head in agreement. "This is why I like him." "So, what do you plan to do? Are you still going to choose him as your mate? Or will you look for another?" Lilith sighed. "I think I'm overthinking things. Sloth is just a friend of his. Also, I still don't know if that silver-haired elf is really a boy or a girl. He's a weirdo, that's for sure." Mammon giggled. There was a tacit agreement between the gods of the deadly sins. Since all of them were in the same faction, there were times when they could work together to achieve a certain goal. However, there was still the rule of privacy, and they were not allowed to share the private life of their daughters to others. Mammon was well aware of Kenneth's circumstance. Even if she loved her own daughter, there were some secrets that she couldn't share with her. "Lilith, I have a suggestion," Mammon said while patting Lilith's head. "For now, settle your dispute with the Maiden of Lust." "But, she's annoying," Lilith stated. "She's nothing more than a B*TCH in heat, so I decided to teach her a lesson. I just didn't expect that Lord William would interfere." The corner of Mammon's lips curled up. "Lord William? You're already calling him your lord. Everyone is calling him sir or lord." Lilith shrugged. "I just decided to follow the trend. That way, I will leave a good first impression." Mammon arched an eyebrow. "And, did you succeed? Did you give him a good impression?" Lilith quieted down. She wanted to say yes, but the earlier incident made her unsure. Deep inside, she was regretting giving in to her impulse and stealing Princess Sidonie's collar. She wasn't expecting that it was very important to the succubus princess, to the point that she would attack her like a rabid dog. Lilith always thought that Princess Sidonie was merely using the collar on her neck as an accessory. Like a trinket that she could toss aside on a whim. While she was aware of the tradition of the Creator royal family, she thought that it was simply a farce. Who would want to wear a slave collar? Only fools would do that. Losing your freedom, and having someone have control over your life was a scary thing. Lilith didn't want to be shackled. She didn't want to be tamed, or domesticated. Her pride and dignity wouldn't allow it. She wouldn't allow it. The Amazon princess closed her eyes to recall the succubus expression when William returned the collar to her neck. As someone who was sensitive to the emotions of other people, she was able to feel Princess Sidonie's relief, happiness and, to a certain extent, her love for William. For a brief moment, Lilith imagined what it would be like to have Sidonie's collar on her neck. Would she have the same expression on her face? Lilith didn't know the answer, and she was not interested in becoming William's slave to know the answer. She was an Amazon warrior. If she wanted something, there was only one way to get it, and that was to fight for it. Chapter 679, I Am Not the Prince of Darkness. William's return to the Creator Empire had spread far and wide. Several high-ranking nobles had decided to visit the academy to form connections with him. Emperor Leonidas and Evexius had ordered Gilbert to ban these nobles from entering the academy in order to not create a commotion. They had already talked to William and the latter agreed to hold a conference at a later date to discuss his experiences in the Tower of Babylon. Of course, the Emperor and the Grand Archmage had pestered William to tell them the full account of what happened in the 51st floor. When the two men heard the half-elf's story, both of them looked at him in admiration. However, there was one big problem, and that was his marriage with Chiffon. In truth, Emperor Leonidas had no problem with it. In fact, he was even happy for the pink-haired girl. Chiffon's mother, April, was once Emperor Leonidas' close friend. If not for the fact that his family had firmly warned him not to take her as his lover, things might have taken a different turn. Unfortunately, there were no ifs, and the news of April's death had saddened him greatly. His concern was mostly due to Chiffon's background. Her father held a very high position in the demon continent, and he might not take the news of her marriage lightly. Well, it doesn't matter, Emperor Leonidas thought. Chiffon's happiness is more important than Lucille's anger. Emperor Leonidas was not afraid of Lucille's retaliation. If that darned demon really wanted to settle his accounts with him, then the latter needed to leave the demon continent first. Knowing Lucille's attitude, he wouldn't dare leave his territory anytime in the future. The politics in the demon continent were complicated. Some were even thinking of staging a civil war to overthrow his reign. Because of this, Lucille didn't have the time nor support to recruit sufficient manpower to threaten the Creator Empire. Still, I need to marry Sidonie to him as soon as possible, Emperor Leonidas thought. A month after his battle at the Misty Sect should give us enough time to prepare. I just pray that the Amazon princess will not get in the way. Since Lilith was Empress Andraste's daughter, and a guest in their empire, he needed to give her some face. I just hope she won't do anything stupid like kidnapping William and dragging him back to the Amazon Empire, Emperor Leonidas mused. Although this possibility was slim, the possibility still existed. After having a lengthy talk with William, Emperor Leonidas and Evexius returned to the royal palace to make the necessary preparations. "This is a bit troublesome," William muttered after he finished reading the handwritten letter from his mother, Arwen. "I'm one of the possible candidates to become the Prince of Darkness." After the defeat of the Elven army, all the families that had been involved in the attack suffered severe repercussions from the Elven Council. The elders that belonged to these families were kicked out from the council, and were banned from entering for the next 500 years. Elves may have a long lifespan, but the loss of political power was a heavy blow to these families. Also, it would take tens of thousands of years before these elven clans would be able to regain their peak strength. The reproduction of elves wasn't as fast as the human race, and they had lost a lot of people in this war. This made William the mortal enemy of these families, but of them dared to seek revenge. They had already seen what William was capable of. If not for the fact that he had spared the elven women, the number of survivors might have only numbered in the hundreds. Still, that didn't mean that the elves would not keep an eye on him. As someone that was a candidate to become the Prince of Darkness, William was a lethal threat to their continued existence. "Are you the Prince of Darkness?" Kenneth asked with a serious expression. William snorted as he carefully stored Arwen's letter. "Prince of Darkness? As if. Big brother, Prince of Darkness sounds cool," Chiffon said with a smile. "Then, would you be my Princess of Darkness?" Kenneth sighed as he shook his head helplessly. He could tell that William wasn't taking things seriously. Even so, he sincerely wished that William wasn't the prince in the prophecy. Even though the elves were currently afraid of antagonizing him, at the first sign of him turning into the prophesied prince, they would throw all caution into the wind and unite to kill him. William had a carefree expression on his face, but deep inside he had his doubts. When he was young, he had once fought side by side with Ian and Isaac at the test of courage. Back then, he had been forced to activate the power of the Collar of Wisteria. This allowed him to use the prestige class, Prince of Darkness, for a short period of time. William would be lying if he said that the possibility didn't exist, but he wasn't too worried about it. His mother was the saintess of the elven race. Even though he didn't get along with the elves, that didn't mean that he would wish for their demise. "Don't worry, I am not the Prince of Darkness," William said firmly. "I mean, do I look like an edgy character?" "Yes." Kenneth nodded. "Very edgy. The corner of William's lips twitched as he looked at his old roommate. "Brew, there are some things that you shouldn't say. Did you forget the time that I poked your face while you were sleeping in our dormitory room?" William sighed and sat down on his desk. He ignored Kenneth for the time being and started to write a letter to reply to his mother. Aside from Arwen's warning, she also told him that the King of the Elves would send a delegation headed by the Elven Princess, Princess Eowyn, to find him in the future. The purpose of their visit was to mediate, and fix the rift between William and the Elven race. This was the king's own way to atone for his inability to stop the war in the southern continent. After writing his letter, he sealed it up properly and handed it to Kenneth. "Send this message back to my mother," William said. "Also, send her my regards when you go back to the Silver Moon continent." Kenneth accepted the letter and frowned. "I will send this letter back to Master, but who told you I was going back to the Silver Moon continent?" "You're not." "No." This time, it was William's turn to frown. He thought that Kenneth was only here as a messenger, and would return to the Silver Moon continent after he received his reply. Looking at the expression on Kenneth's face, he could tell that the latter wasn't lying. "Then, what are your future plans?" William asked. Kenneth smiled as he crossed his arms over his chest. "Master told me to watch over you and ensure that you don't get into trouble. The Amazon princess had already set her eyes on you, so she is bound to make her move soon. Don't worry. As long as I'm around, you'll be safe from her clutches." William scratched his cheek as he stared at the delicate-looking elf in front of him. He was very tempted to tell Kenneth that he had lost the battle against Lilith, so his words didn't sound too convincing. Of course, for the sake of world peace, the half-elf didn't say his thoughts out loud. He could only sigh in his heart because of his unusual relationship with the members of the Seven Deadly Sins. Chapter 680, Look for someone smart, and trustworthy. William was busy adjusting the power of his flame of purification, while tossing things inside the yin-yang cauldron. Today was the day that the Grand Conference would be held inside the Academy. This conference would be attended by Emperor Leonidas, as well as the high-ranking members of the nobility of the Creator Empire. Of course, there were some special guests like the ambassadors of the different empires, kingdoms, who wanted to see the legendary half-elf who had accomplished the impossible. In truth, William had no intention of meeting them face to face. Because of this, he decided to craft a special potion called the Phony Juice Potion. After seeing that the concoction is almost finished, William summoned a small dagger in order to take a drop of his blood to add to the potion. This was the first time that he made this potion, so he was looking forward to its effects. A few minutes later, the potion was finally done. He scooped it inside a vial and shook it properly. "Looks good," William said with appreciation. "Phony juice potion. What were you expecting, pumpkin juice? Anyone who drinks this potion will transform into a perfect replica of the person whose blood is added to the potion. The effect of the transformation will last for an hour. With this, I won't have to personally go to that conference." William chuckled evilly. "I'm a genius." Because of Kenneth's and Lilith's presence in the Academy, William decided to lie low and hide in the Thousand Beast domain. Right now, he wanted to challenge the Dungeon of Atlantis, and raise the level of his job classes. The half-elf didn't want to use his Einherjar job class as much as possible because of the risk of losing his memories. Although his past life was tragic, it was filled with wonderful memories, so he didn't want to lose them. Do they really think that just because they wanted to see me, any Dick, Tom, and Harry can just come to the Academy and demand my presence?" William snorted. "This sir is busy. I have no time for socializing." The 3 phony juice potions in his hand glowed in a golden light. Clearly, they were high-quality potions, and William was very proud of himself for succeeding on his first try. "Now I just need to find some test subjects, I mean helpers, and I'll be free." William smirked before leaving the alchemy room. Albert, William's no-good 5th master, was sleeping on the couch. Just a single glance was enough to tell William that his alchemist master had a colorful night because of the strong scent of womanly perfume on his body. After discovering that William had already arrived at the academy, Albert had tried to drag him to the red light district a day ago to have some fun. It was his way of celebrating William's coming of age, and even declared that he would shoulder all of the expenses. It was quite unfortunate that Chiffon, Ian, Princess Sidonie, and Kenneth were with him when Albert showed up. Because of the deathly stares that were directed at Albert's body, the alchemist decided to make a strategic retreat and went to the red light district without William. William left Albert's residence and hurried back to his dormitory room. The conference would be happening in 2 hours, and he wanted to escape as soon as possible. Currently, Princess Sidonie and Ian were doing something together. Kenneth and Lilith had been given VIP seats in the conference room, so they weren't around for the time being. After Lilith's and Princess Sidonie's incident, the Amazon princess didn't show herself in front of William again. He didn't know if Lilith was only lying low for the time being, or the latter had completely given up on him. In any case, William preferred to stay as far away from the greedy Amazon as possible. One look at Lilith and William could tell that she, him, and James were the same type of people. If James were to see Lilith, the old coot would definitely ask her the question. "Are you perhaps one of my long-lost granddaughters? I can tell that the blood of bandits runs deep in your veins." William chuckled at this thought. He had thrown all responsibilities to James and left the Tower of Babylon. He didn't feel guilty doing so because he knew that James had come to the tower for the sole purpose of guarding their family's possessions. As long as the old bandit took the helm, no other bandits would be able to even touch a single gold coin from their family's purse. In fact, these bandits would even lose their own money if they dared to come within his reach. "Welcome back, big brother," Chiffon greeted William as soon as he entered the room. William planted a kiss on her cheeks before handing her one of the potions in his hand. "Chiffon, I need a favor," William said. "Look for someone smart and trustworthy in the Thousand Beast domain and let them drink this. This potion is called the Phony Juice Potion. Anyone who drinks it will transform into me for an hour. Take the fake me to the conference room, and let him answer the questions of the nobility. I will go to the dungeon of Atlantis to play a bit. After the conference is over, you can come and join me." Chiffon obediently nodded her head. "Look for someone smart and trustworthy. Bring them to the conference room to answer questions," Chiffon repeated William's words. "Leave this to me, big brother. I won't let you down." "I know you won't." William patted her head lovingly before disappearing. He didn't want to take any chances, so he decided to leave while he still could. If Emperor Leonidas or Avexius suddenly came knocking on his door, it would be too late to escape then. Chiffon looked at the potion for a while and pondered for a bit. "Someone smart and trustworthy," Chiffon muttered. A few seconds later, she made up her mind and called for one of the smartest and trustworthy friends she currently had. "B1, come," Chiffon said. Immediately, a portal appeared and a red bird flew out of it. After encircling the room once, B1 landed in front of Chiffon and looked at her with curiosity. "B1, I need your help." Chiffon started to explain William's errand to him and the bird nodded its head in understanding. "You looked for the right person, right bird." B1 used its right wing to pat its chest with confidence. "This is a piece of cake to me." Chiffon smiled and nodded her head. She praised herself for choosing the right bird for the job. 2 hours later, the conference room was already crowded with people. Nobles, students, professors, and other influential figures had gathered to witness William's interview. Emperor Leonidas and Avexius were also there to show their presence and give their support to William. Gilbert scanned the crowd and decided to start the interview session. He rose from his seat and stood on the platform to address everyone in the room. "We are gathered here today to witness the birth of a legend," Gilbert said. "A student of our academy had done the impossible, and he had agreed to come here today to answer everyone's questions. Without further delay, allow me to present to you, William von Ainsworth. A thunderous applause followed his announcement, and cheers erupted from the crowd. It was also at that moment when a handsome half-elf walked from the back door of the conference room. William waved and smiled at the crowd, which made the cheering louder. Princess Sidonie, Ian, Kenneth, and Lilith were seated at the front row seats and eyed the red-headed teenager who had a smug expression on his face. William didn't pay any attention to them and headed to the raised platform. He was wearing a princely black uniform, and it highlighted the color of his hair and eyes. Some of the girls squealed when William entered the room. The half-elf glanced at the girls and gave them a playful wink which made them giggle in their seats. These exchanges didn't escape the high-ranking nobles of the Creator Empire, and their plan of honey-trapping William was reignited in their minds. After a while, the applause ended, and the half-elf nodded his head in acknowledgement. "Good day everyone," William said with a devilish smile on his face. "Nice to meet all of you. You filthy mother-f***ers.